it is there. All right, I'm just going to test the audio really quick. All right, would you go ahead and just say something, Guy? Uh-oh, we better not do that. I'm trying to listen to two places at once, so.
Yeah, here I'm talking, so I don't hear an echo except in my own head.
All right, just give me 1 second while I go double check on Facebook.
Okay.
And make sure we're good.
Testing 1, 2.
Keep going.
Testing, hello. Glad you could be with us today, and we'll get our...
All right. I think we're good. Sorry about that. I think we're good. The audio sounds good on my end. So I'm going to read the title and the key lesson if you want me to, and then I'll hand it over to you.
Please.
All right, here we go, everyone. Our topic for today is how to unlock the lost treasure of your true self. And here's the key lesson. Being in conscious relationship with what is holy in life is only as possible as we are willing to see and to be, accordingly, the whole of who and what we are in each moment. All right, Guy, I'm going to hand it to you, and I'll come back on after your talk.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm glad that we are connecting as this technology allows us to do. We have a deep subject to look at together, and I asked that Kate read that key lesson. It was actually from yesterday's Insight Timer. It was something that introduced the material for that, but I thought it was important for us to look at that idea for a brief moment before we get into what is really accompanying material that will strengthen what we learned yesterday. You don't need to have been online yesterday, but for those of you that were, you will see that this is a nice way to strengthen the impressions that we took from the material. You would think, given that initial key lesson, that nothing could be more natural, if not necessary, for a human being than to be present to the whole of what they are in any given moment. Like that commercial you see with the phones. You know, do you want this coverage where you've got 3 little spots over the entire United States, or do you want this coverage that covers the whole thing? And we would like, I imagine, to be connected at all times to the most possibilities that we have as human beings. But we're not. We are in a constantly limited state where, without knowing exactly why, this relationship, instead of being the whole of what we are, is limited to the whole of what takes us over in the moment, whatever that reaction may be. So I want to look at this deeply with you, and I'm going to do so by setting the stage with the second key lesson for this material, which I'll ask that it be brought up, and we will look at it together. Please do pay as close attention as you can. Sleeping man, sleeping woman, is much like a weather vane turned round and round. First its heading is east, then west, now south turns to north. Driven to move but going nowhere because, like the moment-to-moment capricious desires that spur him or her on, he has no direction of his own. And like the weather vane, his erratic thoughts can only point but never arrive. His emotions change direction as dictated by whatever the prevailing wind, as dictated again by whatever is moving him. So, to summarize this up, he is void of any other will. He has none. This is a startling idea, and most of us are very uncomfortable with the idea that he has no will of his own. And yet, if we can be honest, take the medicine that heals, if you will, where is my will when I find myself in the will of impatience? I know that I shouldn't hurt other people. Where is the will of understanding when it's time for me to bear myself instead of punish you for my reaction? Where is my will when I need it? How about where's my will when I'm sitting in front of a plate of cookies or pizza? And it's always after we do the thing where we are co-opted by a will that doesn't belong to us that we take the judgment of ourselves in that moment for being the proof that we really did have will, and next time we will do better. But the fact is, and we know it, next time we don't do better, because we are like that weather vane, always in the hands of something forever pointing, never arriving, changing direction according to whatever the desire is that dominates in that moment, and then explaining or justifying ourselves to others, and nothing changes. This is the furthest thing from being who and what we actually are. And if you're interested, if it makes sense to you, and I don't have time to have a dialogue, say, are you following me? What is going on? Let's examine this idea that we are, without knowing it, like a weather vane, where at one point in time, something will happen and one part of us will respond, lead us into whatever it does, then we will be picked up by another part that tries to get away from the unwanted part that was selected. So here's the main idea. Listen carefully. It's not terribly esoteric, but it is vital that we understand it. You and I, we human beings, for lack of better terminology, we have three different bodies. Go slow. We have a physical body, that's evident. What's not evident is that we have an intellectual body. And then we also have an emotional body. Physical, intellectual, emotional. And these three bodies are presently totally disconnected from one another. And we can see this if we're willing to see it. For instance, what my body wants to eat is in conflict with the part of me that knows better. And the part of me that knows better is then punished by the emotional part that says you should have done other than you did. So these different bodies are almost always in conflict with one another. Not to mention how disconnected that you and I are from them every time we identify with one aspect or another. Identify with a series of thoughts that looks and says, I see what's going on, and I judge it accordingly. And then my emotional parts, my physical body, feels the pain of the judgment. But I don't feel the pain of the judgment. I'm not aware of the senses in my body. What I'm aware of is the need to justify the pain that I'm in that moment, because I don't understand the pain I'm in that moment belongs to one part of me dominating some other part and in conflict with all the others. Now, I have to move along. I trust that you can see this through experience. And we can see that it's confusing. It's difficult for us, all of us, because on one hand, in one sense, these parts of us, this physical, this mental, this emotional part, they are created to work in concert with nature. They are, in fact, an expression of nature at this physical level, and they serve her needs so that the body, the mind, the emotions are all caught up in the sexual aspect, trying to propagate the species, serving all the time the social demands of wanting to belong, seeking the approval of the mob, of the herd, whatever that may be that we are a part of. And all the time involved in these rotating parts of ourselves, trying to imagine what we have to have, do, or be in order to draw me to you, draw you to me, to draw us together, which is what nature wants. And yet, the very need to draw others to ourselves often creates exactly the opposite effect, doesn't it? So that sometimes when I'm busy trying to draw you to me without knowing it, I'm setting you against me. I think I'll draw you to me if I look strong, wise, intelligent, if I have a lot of money, if I'm handsome or beautiful. I'll draw what I need in order to feel complete. And yet the very act of trying to get these things, let alone manifest them so I look like someone, creates constant second force, meaning people resist the attempt to look fearless when we try to do that. When we show off, people resist that. We don't know that. You drop names in a conversation, you think, boy, I'm going to draw these people. No, they see right through it. So we're in constant conflict with the world around us because these interior bodies, this physical, mental, and emotional body, it's all disconnected. It doesn't know what the right hand is doing when the left hand's active, vice versa. So we don't see, in short, how we serve something that while on one hand it may serve our natural and, quote, physical needs, but at the same time it doesn't serve us at all. And when I say if it doesn't serve us, I mean that it doesn't serve, for those of us this is true, it doesn't serve our wish to know a life that is integrated, that is whole, that is secure, that is complete. It doesn't serve our divine possibilities. Quite the opposite. I imagine to myself what it's like to be a good Christian or good Buddhist, and then I try to live up to some ideas, opinions, images, beliefs. And the more I try to live up to these things that I wouldn't even be stretching for if they weren't trying to balance something in myself that I'm unaware of. And so I create the opposite effect. And if you're following me here, then you should be able to see. We know that there is another kind of body in us. By the grace of God, from time to time, we experience the presence of another kind of system, another kind of being. And that moment where we experience this other kind of body, you're in nature, as I often like to describe. You see that beautiful, vast ocean. You look at the night sky. You see the fall colors, whatever it is. There's no separation in that moment. My mind, my emotion, and my body are all attuned to one thing. And in that unity, I am complete. The observer and the observed are reconciled, and there is a peace that passes understanding, because it isn't calling on the understanding of one part or another in order to pull us into something whole. We're already there, but we don't know we're already there. So whatever you want to call this other body, this indwelling Christ, the Buddha nature, whatever name you would give it, and it makes no difference at all, we can understand that while we are seemingly apart from these competing bodies, at the same time, we live without even being aware of it in a mysterious way, connected not just to these disparate bodies, but to another order of ourselves that is, if you will, of them but not in them. Like a fish swims in the depths of the ocean. A bird flies through. I see these pelicans, these eagles. They fly through these open skies. They live in an invisible body that they're not aware of, but that their nature serves the body that they swim through and that they fly through. But they have no awareness of this other body that they are already a part of by nature. You and I are intended to be a part of, to know consciously this other body that when we are present to it, fulfills the possibilities of all our bodies in that moment, so that we have this sense, by the grace of God, of a new and higher order of self, with not just a timeless wisdom, but a strength that goes before us, as Scripture says, and goes before us, and in that revelation shows us everything that we need is already there, and that it already knows everything about us. Let me say it again. We have moments where everything we need is there. Sometimes we don't want those moments, but everything is there that we need in order to begin transcending ourselves. Or some of these moments we do want, because we have an epiphany. And we realize we didn't give ourselves that insight, but suddenly we are in a relationship with the moment where all of us is receiving a certain impression, and we realize, you know what? Somehow or other, call it what you will, Christ, the divine, knew everything about me that I didn't know. I didn't know that this was in me, that I could be like that. I didn't know I had the possibility of experiencing a unity that transcends time. I didn't know it. And then it's there. And in that moment, it's stunning. Already within me is something that already knows everything about me. And not only knows everything about me, but if I'm properly attentive, attuned with the whole of myself, keeps bringing me into these moments where it reveals that to me. In Psalms, this is out of Psalms. Lord, you have examined me and know all about me. You know when I sit down and when I get up. You know my thoughts before I think them. That's right out of David. In the New Testament, Christ said, are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing, which is like no money at all? And one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father. Meaning, not one of those sparrows is going to hit the ground and die without your Father in heaven knowing that they've done them. The very hairs on your head are numbered. And some of more true than for some of us. They're numbered. So don't be afraid, because you're of more value than the sparrows. And lastly, the prodigal son. It's said right in it, but we don't see it. And when he arose, after he found out that he had nothing, that all of his efforts on the outward bound movement, separating himself from his father's home, from this altogether new body, he on the outward bound, he got up and he came to his father. And when he was a great way off, it says, his father saw him and had compassion and ran to him and fell upon his neck, kissing him. So here's this intelligence, this wisdom, this love. And you and I have wandered so far away from our relationship with it. And yet the moment that we have enough wherewithal where we can see, my desires told me if I went out and became successful, famous, rich, whatever, if I got more beautiful, got a better body, I'd attract what I need. And then I find out I didn't attract what I need. I attracted what I thought I needed, but now I got to pay for it. Now it's a source of pain, not pleasure. So we begin to recognize that there is at all points in time, when we get to that point, something that knew before we did exactly where we were, what we needed, and what had to be done to strengthen that relationship with this timeless divine wisdom. Let me bring up the next key lesson. It summarizes what we've been talking about to date. Read with me. Actively at rest in the unseen space between here and there, between now and then, dwells a timeless realm that is all and everywhere at once. It cannot be seen with the eyes. It is beyond anything the mind can imagine. And yet, because this kingdom resides in the heart, it can be realized in any moment when all 3 parts of oneself, body, mind, and heart, are gathered together in the silent light of higher self-awareness. Actively at rest in the unseen space between here and there, between now and then, dwells a timeless realm that is all and everywhere at once. It cannot be seen with the eyes, it can't be imagined, and yet that kingdom resides at all times in the heart, and it can be realized in any moment when all 3 parts of us are gathered in the silent light of this higher awareness that we're looking at. All Scripture, all true Scripture, spiritual teachings, East and West, every last one of them hints at this idea of a higher order of self, along with its timeless wisdom and incorruptible strength. That, by the way, as I said, goes before us. That already knows everything that we need, and that because it knows what we need, we're able to live in a different state of ourself, which, of course, in a transition leads us to this. I can sense this. I have a right feeling about it. I wish that it were true, but how in the name of God do I as a human being, living as I live, one moment caught up in a hot emotion, a cold feeling, the next minute filled with thoughts about how to escape the temperature of my own reactions, and then my body suffering the tension and the stress of being constricted, and then the mind picking up the tension of the body, tries to reconcile some of the emotional parts. So you've got all these parts of ourselves trying to straighten out each other when they're not even present and have no presence in that which would reveal to them their proper role, not only that, but what it would take to be integrated. So this is the next phase of our talk. Take a nice deep breath. I hope it hasn't been confusing. I hope you've been able to follow and catch some of what we're saying, but we're going to take a little step back now. I want to introduce you to a really interesting idea. As above, so below, as within, so without. Back in the day, and by that I don't mean back in the 60s, when the European continents were busy going back and forth, taking the precious materials from the New World and setting up governments and doing all the things they did that they might have personal, constant access to what they thought would enrich them. Sometimes these treasures were sent back and forth in these ships, these great sailing ships. And the rarest of these treasures would be put into what was called a 3-key lockbox, a 3-key treasure chest. The 3-key lock was a treasure chest that required 3 separate keys to open it. Often, the captain carried one of the keys. The governor or the lord or the noble where the treasure was being shipped to in that 3-key lockbox might have had 1 or 2. But the owner always had all 3 keys. And it took 3 keys. So the ship's captain couldn't open it by himself. The governor, where that box would land and who was intended to transport it to the owner of it, he couldn't open it. It took the 3 keys, and only the owner had all 3 keys. Now, this is fascinating. I haven't got time to go into it, but there are a lot of stories, older stories, truth stories, where these 3 keys represent, if you want, different aspects, different characteristics, different parts of an individual that need to work together in order to access the treasure. Like a trinity. So that the 3 keys would be represented, if you want, by 3 people who have to work together to bring about a certain result, or by 3 parts of a human being that have to be brought together in order to open the treasure and receive that which was sent to them, given to them freely. I hope you understand this idea. I'll tell you a story to exemplify it. Once upon a time, there was a great kingdom and a great king, great queen. And their realm was a peaceable one. It's not that it was without problems, but there was always a successful solution that served everyone involved in whatever that situation was. I really like that idea. A successful solution that served everyone involved in that problem. For you and I, we're not concerned with whether or not the person who's causing us problems successfully reconciles that condition. We want them to serve us. In this higher kingdom, the true solutions serve everyone involved in whatever that particular moment of challenge might be. Now, he wants to send his daughter, who's come of age, to one of the outlying distant kingdoms. Unlike the prodigal son, who was dead set on getting out there and making a name for himself, this young princess, coming of age and knowing that she needs to learn all that she can, is reluctant. She's hesitant, and she says to her father and mother, I can't do what you're asking me to do. I'm inadequate to the task. You want me to go out and help unify these kingdoms. She says, I'm kind of a wreck myself. How do you expect me to go do that? And the king and queen smiled, as kings and queens who are true kings and queens do, with understanding. And they said, you're not to fear, daughter, because we have it set up so that you can touch base with us as often as you please, especially when you need guidance. Remember those words, that you can touch base with us as often as you need, especially when you need guidance. And she says, well, how is that possible? And at that point, they walk their daughter into their treasure room, and there on a small pedestal in the middle of the room, there's a small 3-key lockbox. And he points to this, and she said, what's that? He says, hold on. He said, I'm going to give you these 3 keys. You must guard them with your life, because it takes all 3 keys to open this box. What's in the box that it takes 3 keys? And how is it going to allow me to constantly touch base with you, to be in contact? He says, patience, daughter. He said, in this box, there is a small mirror. It's a kind of magic mirror. I can't explain it to you. You'll have to see it work for yourself. But any time that you need to touch base with myself or your mother, with the kingdom, anytime that you need understanding that you don't have because you've run into something that seems too great for you to deal with, all you need to do is use the 3 keys, open the box, take out the mirror, and look into the mirror and look at the reflection of yourself. That's all you have to do. He said, because if you'll do that much, if you'll get that far, you will not only be in instant contact with us, but in that same moment that you are in instant contact with us, you will feel our guiding touch. And so it is. Finish the story quickly. She goes out and she's able to do her work, what she's been asked to do. And you must, as an aspirant, get rid of this silly notion that this idea of a 3-key treasure chest with a mirror that allows you to be in touch instantaneously with this interior being, this greater body of which you are already a part. You must get over the silly notion that that means somehow or other you're never going to have pain or problems again. That's not the nature of this life. The nature of this life is to gradually reveal that everything that comes to us or that we come to is known before we get to it, and our relationship to those moments is established, but not by the part of us that meets it, that wants it or doesn't want it, but the part of us that's the whole of us that can see in that mirror. For instance, maybe she's out there, she picks up the mirror and she sees she's enraged, and yet she's come to bring peace. She's locked down in some stress, and yet she's there to help people change the way they meet life. And so she starts to see in this mirror what is first very painful. But if she'll stay with the observation, in the moment that she sees all of that and she understands she must stay there and see this reflection of herself, suddenly there's another relationship, another contact. She's in touch with the whole of the kingdom that gives her the keys to that treasure, which is always in herself, and she starts to recognize this. Now, let me look at this with you in very practical terms, because it's fine to have these stories. Indeed, it is wonderful to feel, if you're capable of doing so, through being able to understand what we've looked at, whether or not that's even remotely possible. And to be able to do so requires looking at your past experience. Who amongst us hasn't had experiences where 5 times, 10 times, I don't want to see that at all. I don't want to see you. I don't want this experience of myself. But then by the grace of the divine, the lesson keeps coming back until one day it returns and you're there in that experience and you realize you've been given this over and over again so that you can see you have unfinished business with the kingdom. You have unfinished business with these disparate bodies fighting with each other. And the only way you know in which to integrate the whole of the moment is to integrate the whole of yourself into what you see in that mirror of the moment. And there's nothing that needs to be done other than to be willing and honest to stay there and to see what we're talking about in this talk. What are these 3 keys, and what is this divine mirror that they unlock in that treasure chest to reveal. So back to where we started, and I'm asking you, if you can, as best you can, to remember what we said about these bodies, because I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Nice deep breath. Come back into your body. Be aware of what your emotions are going through. Is your mind confused? Are you struggling with any one of those aspects? And odds are that you are. Or are you feeling this as we're describing it, and there's a certain unity, a certain feeling of, I really love this? Every psychic function, and it's not complicated. What's a psychic function? A psychic function is the part of us, an invisible part of us, that reveals our relationship to an invisible world. For instance, a psychic part of us is this mind. It has a psychic function. It can look at a moment and it can see possibilities in the moment. The possibilities aren't there. They haven't been actualized, but the mind can see the possibilities. So that means this function of mind that can see sees possibilities. That is a psychic function. Intuition is a psychic function. So each of these functions, whether it's the mind that can see possibilities, or it's the body that can sense the environment, that is in relationship to everything that is acting on it and touching it, or the emotions that somehow or other can feel without touching, yet being touched by everything that's around it, so that it knows the quality, it knows the content of its environment. These functions are not just separate parts. We realize our relationship to life through them. These invisible parts of ourself is each a part of not just how we perceive life, but what determines our experience of that moment as well. So that each of these functions plays a very distinct but separate part in how we receive, realize, and ultimately integrate, gain insight into self-knowledge. Gee, I hope you followed that. Where does self-knowledge come from? It doesn't happen by accident. Again, one of these passages in Scripture that talks about how God knows before we do what we need, and what we knock and the door will be answered. Ask and you shall receive, implying that what we need on the other side of the door, what we want to receive, is there waiting for us. We just don't know how to knock. We don't know how to ask. That's what this talk is about, these three keys. With the mind, we see one aspect of things and events. But oftentimes the mind sees things, and the heart, having its own desires asleep, says, no, I don't want, what you see, I don't want to experience. And the body, stressed out by the emotions, by the reactions, then is in conflict with the mind that says, but I want this. The body's saying, no, this isn't good for you. On and on it goes. The mind sees aspects, sensations register the totality of our environment. And perhaps most important of all is this body of emotions. This heart with which we are given away to be not just conscious of everything that is moving into and through us, but because we are indeed aware of what is moving into and through us, we recognize in that moment that this is what real self-knowledge is. Real self-knowledge is complete knowledge of any subject in any moment that requires and that we are given a simultaneous awareness of our mind, of our sensations, and our feelings. That's what self-knowledge is. You may not know it, you may not think of it that way, but you go outside on a beautiful day. You look at a majestic creature in nature. You watch an eagle or a seagull. In that moment, if you're fully present, you experience that. Why do you think you're drawn To look at the things that you're drawn to, that you find beauty or some kind of peace in. Because in that moment of relationship, you gain self-knowledge. And what is the knowledge that you gain? That what you see is not outside of you, but a part of you unfolding at the same moment that you're observing what you're observing with all three parts of yourself. But unfortunately for us, this is very rare. And I said at the start of the talk, this is what all spiritual teachings are about. How to see, feel, and be touched by every moment the way we are intended to experience them, so that in seeing the reflection of ourselves in that mirror of the moment, we begin to gain this precious self-knowledge. It doesn't add anything to you. Self-knowledge, we keep trying to add knowledge. That our belief is that if the mind can add more content to itself, we'll be more content. And it's exactly the opposite. Because the more content we add to our mind, the more that mind then measures our reactions, our feelings, our sensations, and decides, because the content says you shouldn't be like that, that we are in fact wrong and out of place. So our own gathering of knowledge, it's right. The Garden of Eden. The fall into this mistaken idea that there was some way in which we could know the difference between good and evil as observers of it, meaning I now know it is good and therefore, or evil, therefore I'm good. I shouldn't have gone on that tangent, but try to stay with me. Complete knowledge requires complete awareness. Complete self-knowledge requires complete awareness. And complete self-knowledge is not me knowledgeable of myself, but me aware of the fact that myself is what I'm seeing. Myself is the totality of the impression of this moment. And that the totality of the impression that is already changing, because it's always being acted on by forces, as it changes, so am I changing, so am I reborn. So am I given a new life. So that when all three of these parts, these bodies are synchronized, which we cannot do, the mind can't. If you've ever tried to play golf or any sport, the mind can't synchronize the body. You want to know how to make a terrible golf swing? Try to think through it. You want to know how to make a worse swing? Fear that you're going to think through it and make a bad deal, and then watch how your body becomes so tense and full of resistance that you actually do the thing you don't want to do. The mind can't do it. The body can't do it. The heart can't do it by itself. And yet, when all three of these parts are together, gathered together, this complete knowledge isn't just of the object of the moment at hand. The complete knowledge is of the knower as well, in which exist all possibilities at that moment. Sometimes I wish, in some respect, that I wasn't talking. Because I have to use all of these words to describe something that is so simple that this mind can't deal with it. Our emotions don't understand it. Something in us never stops measuring who we are against the moment that we're in. Who we are given what that person said and what we need to give back to that person so we can maintain this image of ourselves. And yet, if you've been following me, we can start to see there are new possibilities. But it requires new self-knowledge and a new kind of action, which I'm still working to get to with you. Let's bring up the fourth and last of these key lessons, please. This indeed is a summary of all we've said so far. I hope you can connect with it. We, you and I, can no more awaken ourselves to ourselves than a rose can bloom without sunlight. So the very fact of being able to see ourselves as we are and have been proves undeniably the existence of another order of intelligence, and a compassionate one at that. Go slow. The fact that I am at times able to see myself, I was blind but now I see, when suddenly I can see myself addicted, compulsive, anxious, greedy, self-centered. For most of my life, I had no idea that all that mattered to me was myself, but that nature had found ways to make it look as if I was concerned with other people. I had no idea that I lived from a nature that was so full of unconscious demands, content carried over from the past, still trying to escape the pain that produced it, that there's no moment that this mind isn't analyzing everything that it can. We have no idea of the depth and breadth of its ceaseless analysis, and then comparing what it says happens in that moment to what it said ought to happen. And again, there's the conflict. The mind creates its own conflict by conjuring up the image of what it should be and then setting it against what it says isn't the way it is, and now in a fight with life. We cannot awaken ourselves. And yet, we have seen that something in us is there before us from time to time, and it actually shows us who and what we've been, which is the indication of some intelligence far greater than the unintelligent action that we took. Suddenly, I see you're in pain. I never saw that pain on your face when I was talking to you before, because I was too busy trying to get away from my own. And suddenly this new awareness allows me to recognize without taking thought at all. You know what? I never knew that this was the way I responded. I never knew. The first thing out of my mouth, the first thing that emanates from this emotional body, the first thing this body does is tense up. And then as a result of that conflict with itself, in itself, then the seeking, the desires that produce what that particular nature that's dominating in the moment tells us, this is what you need to do in order to get rid of this conflict. And the very action of listening to one part of us tell us what to do to solve the pain in the other parts is conflict. And then we'll run into it again and again. But again, by the grace of God, a person starts to understand. I see it. In this moment, I'm present enough, meaning I'm not letting my own thoughts and feelings tell me who I am, who you are, what to do. I'm not letting these reactions, the emotion of it, the negativity. I'm present enough, and I realize that I'm all the time in contact with home base, with heaven's base. And I can touch base anytime that I want to. But in order to touch base with that which knows before I knew what I need in that moment, how to bring about the integration of these separate parts of myself, but before that can happen, I have to see very clearly for myself what is actually happening to me. Oh, I'll just strengthen that for a minute. I have to see what is actually happening to me. We don't know. Did you know that? What is actually happening to us when we're negative? What is actually happening to us when we're negative is that we are in some form of suffering predicated by a mind that has decided that the source of the pain is outside of us and needs to be blamed. So we have no actual experience of the moment. We are experiencing the actualization of an unconscious nature that is defining and confining us to its experience. If I was actually present, and may God help us, if I was actually present, would I ever hurt you? If I was actually present, would I ever look at you with that demeaning look? If I was actually present, would I ever speak in that endlessly apologetic, sickening set of tones that goes everywhere where I want people to approve of me? If I was actually present. If I was actually present, would I let a thought lead me into the past and start talking to me about all the things that are painful and problematic back there, all these terrible people? If I was actually present, would I walk into an insane asylum and sit down and have a meal with the lunatics there, hoping to find some kind of sane action to take downstream? I would never do it if I was actually present. And that's what I'm describing to you here, is how we can start to become actually present in the presence of the King, in the presence of the Christ, in the presence of this living light. Now let's get into it with the remaining few minutes. I said there are 3 keys that unlock the treasure of our true self. And that to unlock this treasure of our true self requires being able to see at once what? What my mind is doing, what my body is going through, and what my emotions are feeling. So that the 3 keys are, you write them down if you want to, you're going to have to experiment. See it, sense it, feel it. See it, mind. Sense it, body. Feel it, heart, emotion. Let's look at it. Wherever you are, I'm sitting here in Florida, and by some unknown grace, I'm looking out at some beautiful water. When we see things that we love, we give ourselves to the vision. When we're in a place that is full of pleasurable sensation, a breeze, warm air, we give ourselves to the sensation. And we give ourselves to the feeling of the unity of these parts of ourselves, and we call that beauty. We call that harmony. Because the knower is not apart from what is known, the observer and the observed are together. But what happens when I walk into that family room or I go to work, I get in my car and this guy is tailgating me, or somebody at the restaurant is giving the waiter a hard time, or I see somebody hurt an animal, and you and I both know immediately comes up inside of us a vast, dark, negative reaction. And so what we see in that moment is what the mind has painted as being the only possible experience in that moment, given how good we are, how we would never be like that, how we would never cast the first stone. And yet there we are, filled with this violence, not free at all, but imagining what we have to do and change everyone else around us to realize this freedom. So the exercise is, in any moment that I can, touch base. Touch base. How do I touch base? Do it with me. See it. Look out. You can see the world around you. You can see me on your screen. See it. And at the same time that you see it, recognize you sense it. The whole of your body is responding to what you see. And at the same time that you sense it, you can feel it. Those are the 3 keys, but they must be together to open this box so that we can see the whole of ourselves at once. Attend to all 3 parts at once, and you will be in touch with the divine. Why? Because in that moment, you'll be receiving everything that is being given to you in that moment to see and to know as true about yourself. You know, I talk to students all the time. So many of us are afraid of ourselves. You mustn't be afraid of you. What is it? How can I be afraid of myself? How can I be afraid of my addictions? Unless something inside of me looks and judges that part of myself, so that I sit in the fear of something I've judged, but that doesn't exist without the judgment of it, of a self that believes it's superior to the very thing that it is incarnating. Imagine for a moment, I judge the very thing that this body incarnates because the mind that judges believes that it's other than the body. When the body, the mind, and the heart are not separate. So anytime you find yourself in judgment, anxious, worried, nervous, remember you have 3 keys, not just one thing by which to measure everything else and then try to make a way for yourself to get rid of that situation. In any moment, and I do mean any moment, but it's easier to start with unwanted ones. Here's the reaction: wake up. Remember the 3 keys: open the box, bring out the mirror in which you can see yourself. And in silence, as silent as possible, take in the full impression of what you see being reflected in yourself. Take in the full impression. That doesn't mean talk to yourself about the impression. That doesn't mean wish that you weren't the way you are in that moment. It doesn't mean that you should sit and think to yourself, well, what would Christ do? Because certainly this can't be right. So now you sit in judgment of yourself as if the part of you that's judging you is better than what's being judged. It's a trick. Take in the full impression. All you want to do is be as present as you can to what the mind is doing, seeing, how it's talking. Why do you think the mind talks to you? Do you know why the mind talks all the time? It's forever trying to reconcile the things that it thinks about that it can't reconcile with thought. It never stops talking. And because it never stops talking, it's always in conflict with some other plan that it's trying to make. And we go through the whole thing again. I'm not going to do it. Wake up, take in the full impression, see what's moving through your mind, what's moving through your body and your heart. Take in that complete impression of being momentarily in complete relationship with the moment. Momentarily, as best you can, this takes work, being in complete relationship with the moment. Because when you and I are in complete relationship with the moment, we find ourselves being completed in that moment. That's what being complete is fulfilling the business of the will of our Father, the will of heaven. And in order for us to fulfill the will of heaven, that it be done on earth, all three parts of us have to be in concert. You can't have one part in concert. We think to ourselves, well, I'm going to let go and let God. Meanwhile, my emotions and my body are tense. My desires are screaming at me. I'm filled with some kind of feeling like this isn't fair. My mind's doing one thing, the other parts of me are doing something else. We will never know the will of heaven that way. We actually come upon this new treasure of our true self by gradually recognizing not what to do with our will, but how we have been done in by identifying with the separate aspects of these bodies and their wills. Not my will, but thy will be done. In order for thy will to be done, I must bring the whole of myself into that, including the things that my mind fears that it sees downstream, including the stress the body goes through as it resists all of that. And that certainly doesn't exclude the emotions, the anger, the sadness. Why me? Why am I in this situation? If all of this is brought together and you see all of it at once, in that moment you have touched base. You've touched base at home. Work as best you can to stay in touch. That's simple. But remember what it means to stay in touch, as opposed to you constantly reaching out and trying to touch what you believe will save you from some kind of trouble, pain, or torment. We'll take a real quick break. If you need to use a facility or get a cup of water or some coffee, please go ahead. I'll invite Kate back on. She'll set a few parameters for us and we can get involved in our dialogue and Q&A session. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Guy. Thank you so much for that talk. All right, everyone. We'll take just a minute or two to stretch and such. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and give a few announcements.
Maybe sing a song.
Sing a song? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I don't think you want me to do that.
Well, yeah.
I don't know what people would prefer, me to sing a song or to give announcements. It's a toss-up.
Sing the announcements. I'm sorry.
Okay, maybe Guy is going to be in the Port Orange Library
There you
for a
go.
talk. February 8th.
Okay, maybe you should just talk about them.
I don't know what you said, but I'm going to give my announcement. All right, Guy is in Florida, as he has mentioned, and I just want to let you know, if you're in the area there, that he is going to be giving a talk at the Port Orange Library on February 8th at noon. You see the information up on the screen. The topic will be The Secret of Letting Go, How to Drop Fear, Worries, and Painful Regrets. So if you're in the area or if you're feeling like a spontaneous road trip is in the cards, you can find out more about the talk on our website at guyfinley.org/portorange, or just go to our events page. You'll see it posted there. And I would love to see you come down to Florida, or up or over, or whatever it ends up being. And we also will be live streaming the talk. I know for sure it will be live streamed to our YouTube channel. We will not have it on GoToWebinar. I may be able to do it on Facebook, but I know for sure it will be on YouTube. So just put that on your calendar, set a reminder, and hopefully we will see you there. I also, let's see. Oh, for our Sunday talks today, just wanting to remind the people who are in the local area here that even though Guy is not here giving the talk at our usual, over at our usual building, we actually do have it set up so that you can come here if you wish and watch with a group of people. So there are some folks here at Life of Learning. We're over in the Annex building, and you are welcome to come join us. Gates open at 8:30, I believe. And just if you have any questions, let us know. Ask Roger. Roger has set all this up for us, so he can tell you all the details on that. But come on over. We do have a nice group here today. And for those of you who are here in the building, I'm actually in the shipping department, as Patricia has probably noticed. But for anyone who is over in the little room watching, if you guys want to come in and talk during the break, you're welcome to do that. During the Q&A, you're welcome to do that. Just pop on in. We are going to start our Q&A in just a moment. Guy, do you have anything before we jump into the Q&A, or?
No.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and run for about a half an hour. Is that good for you, Guy? Till 11, or I guess that would be 2 p.m. your time?
Sure.
Okay. Did I do that calculation right?
You did good.
Okay, good. Yeah, we'll do a Q&A for a half an hour here. And I do have 3 questions that have come in over the break, which I will sprinkle in as we go along if we don't have hands and such. If you're on GoToWebinar, remember you can raise your hand to speak with Guy. If you're on any other platform, you can jump over to GoToWebinar just by going to guyfinley.org/class and then sign in for free, and you can join in the discussion directly with Guy if you wish. Send questions in. I do see a hand up. Rebecca has her hand up, but I want to just start with this one comment that came in on YouTube. Let me grab that and send it over to you, Guy. Of course, now I'm all mixed up in my document here.
It's okay.
Here we go.
I think we're doing pretty good for first time in a year.
I know, we're kind of getting our sea legs.
Yeah.
So things actually, technically speaking, have gone pretty well. All right, here I am going to send you this little note. It came in from Baja Girl on YouTube. This is so very true about our minds. It sounds like my conflicts with my mind. I have to constantly remind myself to let go. Tired of regurgitating thoughts.
Yeah, Baja Girl, it is virtually impossible to describe, let alone explain, a peace that isn't born of the mind trying to put itself to sleep or to put itself in a place where it feels better about itself, but a peace that comes because you understand the struggle of the mind is not your struggle. So the minute it starts and the body starts to follow, the emotions get involved, the minute that happens, the awareness of it puts you in relationship with a base. And when I say a base being, I don't mean a low being. I mean the base of being itself that cannot act against itself. That's what peace is. It doesn't mean that it's always pleasurable. It just means that you've finally, as a result of seeing the very things that you're describing here, see, you know what? How futile it is for me to fight with myself. Worse, to fight with others. But I don't know what to do if I don't fight with myself. If I don't try to quiet my mind. If I don't try to rationalize these desires, the things that I've done against myself and others. I don't know what to do with my resentments in the past unless I keep trying to revisit and reconcile them. And then you see that this mind that is set against itself. These parts are actually set against themselves. And they don't know they're set against themselves because no one part by itself has awareness. It's staggering. I don't know how well I'm able to explain it to you. The mind doesn't have an awareness of its own. The mind is aware of the conditions around it through the body that senses the conditions. The body has no feeling, just sensations, meaning the body isn't the heart. But when the emotions begin getting ramped up because the mind's struggling to escape the content of itself, now the body feels that stress. So there's this endless tug-of-war going on. If I'm grateful for one thing in my life, I'm 75, I'll be 76 years old in like less than a month, is that by the grace of heaven, I understand and am able now to live without being torn apart by my own mind, body, and heart. And just that much is a miracle. That's what we're after, is gradually being able to gather wherever 2 or 3 of you are gathered in my name. I didn't even think about that scripture. There I am. That's what we want. Takes work, Baja girl. Stay close. On we go, Kate.
All right, we have 3 hands up now. We've got Rebecca, then Irene, then Fiona. And I'll probably sprinkle another question in somewhere in the middle there, but let's go to Rebecca first.
Sure.
Good morning, good afternoon, Guy, and Happy New Year to you, just from my heart, from my being. I really just want to say, this space is so, it's like pure nutrition, bad analogy, but I just hope you feel how beautiful this space is I could speak for this entity that's talking now, and I imagine for others. So everything you say really hits a chord, strikes a chord, and I just really appreciate it, and always just want to let you know and keep coming back to this material because it's the only way. So thank you.
You bet. And nice to hear from you, Rebecca. I know I've been off and away a little bit, but I'm back on it, even though I have this other work I'm trying to do here in Florida, some of which you will learn about as time goes along, certainly the novel that I want to write. And it is, in the truest words, food for the soul. Food for the soul. When you hear the idea, know the truth and the truth will set you free, what do you think it's talking about? It's saying that as you're able to receive and ingest with whatever parts of you can, and ideally with all 3 parts, you are feeding the part of yourself that knows eventually itself as not separate from everything that it sees and takes part in. Made in the image of God. So, all good. On we go, Kate.
All right, we're going to go to Irene next. Irene, you can, oops. Hang on, your hand went down. If you wish to speak, go ahead and hit your microphone so that it unmutes. Now your hand went up. I think you might be hitting the wrong button. I'll give you a second, Irene, to see if you can find it. I know you've done it before.
Okay, now?
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Sorry, I got there in the end.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you so much at the relief that came through this talk, and awareness is I don't have words. I just wanted you to know that. But most of all, the peace. And relief.
Yes.
Huge relief.
Yes. Now, Irene, listen carefully. That's part of what happens when 2 or 3 are gathered in the name of this living light, is that we literally are drawn together for a purpose greater than the mind can name or the body can appetite for. And we have a sense of peace and well-being every time. That's when you go to a meeting, there's an atmosphere. The atmosphere is caused by the unity of this body. We are actually entering into another body together.
Right.
That's all I do is I facilitate that awareness. But once that meeting is over and we're not talking anymore, and then we go
Yes.
into the refrigerator and somebody drank the last milk that we wanted our cereal with, then it's not the contentment's gone out the window. So what we want to do is remember at all times that contentment is never not there. It's we who depart from it by identifying with one dominating part or another instead of seeing the whole of ourselves and paying the cost of that, Irene. So that's all. Stay close. We'll get there. We're working at it. You bet.
Thank you.
All right, that was great. Thank you, Irene. I'm going to put in this question that came in from Luke on YouTube. And there it is for you, Guy. Luke says, I'm fighting to stop the fight, and it is exhausting. Having let go of my biggest addictions to pain and pleasure and all the other substances to numb the pain, feeling it all now is overwhelming. Is there a question here? Maybe just an expression of desperation.
I'm letting something formulate, Luke. I suppose the first thing that I should say is that it is these very moments when things, as they will, seem to prove all of this that I've gone through and done to what end. And it seems in that moment, as we listen to our own mind measure the success of all that it applied itself to, and then seeing that it never attained what it imagined, then turning on itself. And we asleep to our mind, not to mention what our body and negative reactions are doing to its considerations. We fall into an unnatural, unconscious identification with the conclusions of an unconscious nature. Because we don't know who else to be. All I've ever known, and I'm speaking for everybody, is whatever surreptitious sense of self suddenly appears in the moment where a thought, a feeling, a bodily reaction comes in, and I'm carried off. And I have no idea that I've been carried off by one part of myself. Because as a rule, for instance, the mind starts to measure this and it goes, oh my God, look at that. And because the mind, the way it works, and because we're not aware of the way the mind works, suddenly it's bringing in all of these associated thoughts and then the corresponding memory and emotional reactions. It brings all of that in. And this tiny conclusion that couldn't be further from the whole of ourselves as a shark from a star, now that tiny conclusion becomes the entire sense of myself. And it's filled with despair. It's filled with the fear that it doesn't know what to do. This is the most, would that I could express it. You and I are always listening to something that has measured the moment, which has become the past, and in the measurement of the past, comparing it to what we think should have happened. And in the moment of that comparison, the conflict, the pain that proves our consideration. And in the moment of identifying with that painful conclusion, the sense of, oh, now what am I going to do? Because I can't see where to go. This is the staggering dark night of the soul when you actually understand you never knew where to go. You never saw the truth. What you saw was the truth your mind was telling you was true for you, in quotes, in that moment, and the you it was describing wasn't you, it was itself, passing itself off as you. In my story with the princess sent by her father, Luke, he told her, these 3 keys open this box. In this box is this mirror. When you look in this mirror and see the whole of yourself, you're back in touch with us, with the kingdom. and I will give you the guidance. I will tell you what you need to do, but I can't tell you if you don't look in the mirror. I can't help you see where you are if you won't look. So it's gradual, and you must understand this, but you must persist. It's gradual. I get to the point where I finally understand I don't have to know anything about tomorrow. What you're going to do, what they're going to say. The mind in this endless measurement, trying to decide that if I do this or go there tomorrow, well, it may cause this trouble, or it'll be a torment when somebody doesn't like what I've done, and now I'm going to lose them. And this mass of miserable, unconscious nature squirming in and amongst itself, trying to escape its own conclusions. And the issue is that it's a negation process, Luke. This mind is always affirming the future, and then when it gets there, it denies what it affirmed. But this process is negation, Luke. I see gradually, not this, not that, not him, not her, not this nature, not that I, not that I, not that I. And then I must learn to live in that void, in that seeming darkness that comes when I no longer can identify with any aspect of myself that wants to cause me pain or consternation. And it's in that darkness that lives the light. The light dwelleth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehends it not. You have to stay there. And if you're seeing what you're seeing, you have no choice anyway. That's the beauty of it. Follow your heart, Luke. Stay close. On we go, Kate.
All right, thank you, Guy. We have Fiona with her hand up. I still have a couple of more questions. If we have time, I'll fit them in.
Yep.
If anyone here at the building wants to come into shipping and speak, go on and do it.
Sure.
Meantime, here we'll do Fiona. Hi, Fiona.
Hello, Kate. Hello, Guy. Nice to see you again.
Ah, Fiona, I wish I could see you.
I know. Well, another few thousand miles, you'd be in Scotland. You just need to travel a bit further east across the Atlantic.
Don't tempt me.
Snow and ice here, though. Patricia wouldn't like it.
No, I know. You've got that right.
Well, I am really being able to get a chance to see, sense, and feel a lot more because of my injury. I had an Achilles rupture before Christmas, and I've often watched myself while working at my best to see, sense, and feel. I'm watching myself rushing from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
Thinking, oh my goodness, how does this? It just doesn't correlate. But now, everything stopped. And although, of course, it's the last way I would possibly ever want to stop, it really is giving me the chance to really fall into that see, sense, feel. And
quite the unexpected, unwanted education, but very grateful for it when at last we understand the necessity of it.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Couldn't happen in any other way.
That's the beginning that's the beginning of faith, Fiona. When you understand there's no moment that can happen in any other way than the experience you're deriving from it. And then you're able to look at that experience and start realizing that this is just one possibility. What if I was able to see all of this unfolding at once? Not a captive, not how do I say? Not happy, not sad, but present. And in that presence, a completely different order of peace that transcends happy and sad.
You nailed it there, the word peace. It is a peace that is a sensing a bigger wholeness for sure. And so just exploring that without words really to add to it. Yes. Thank you, Guy. I really appreciate it.
Of course, Fiona. And I'll see you when I see you.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye for now.
All right. I'm going to bring in this question that came in from Lucy on our website a couple of weeks back. Basically, she's asking about two different quotes in your book, The Lost Secrets of Prayer. Would you like to just start with the first one, or shall I read the whole thing?
I'll just start with the first one.
Okay. She says, hello, I would like if Guy would provide clarity on a few quotes from his book, The Lost Secrets of Prayer. First, the spiritual lesson that's hardest learned is that what you have borrowed must be returned. Let me read that again. The spiritual lesson that's hardest learned is that what you have borrowed must be returned.
You know, sometimes I hear certain things, in this instance, something apparently that I wrote, and it's as accurate and definitive as it can be. What is the spiritual lesson that I've learned that what I've borrowed has to be returned? Any sense of myself, Lucy. I borrow a sense of self when I go to a family gathering and I think I'm going to say something impressive and everybody is bored and goes to sleep at the table. I borrowed an identity when I identified with this idea that everybody's going to think I'm brilliant. And when it turns out that I don't get the response I want, I have to give it up, don't I? It has to be returned. And then I'm empty. And then I go looking for the next thing. And I identify with this, or I give myself to that, believing that one way or another, this is going to bring about completion. It's going to bring an end to my emptiness. And so I fill myself with some hope or aspiration for a time to come. And I'm identified with it. And when the time comes, it's as empty as a bucket. And then I have to return that identity. So what we're talking about here, Lucy, is recognizing that anything that this mind unconsciously identifies with, and that's all it does presently, in order to escape the emptiness of itself, has to be returned. And as you see that, you'll have no choice, as I was describing to Luke. I'm going to have to remain with this emptiness. I'm not going to borrow any sense of self from the moment by imagining or dreaming or thinking about how things will be when. I'm going to stay right here. I'm going to stay in touch with that moment in which I can see the sense of myself that is empty, and I'm not going to serve it as I've always done. Let's go on, Kate.
All right. Eric says that he can come on and say something. So come on in, Eric.
Perfect. Do I get to see him?
I got.
Are you? I want to. Where's Eric? Let me see Eric. Or if he doesn't want to, it's okay. There he is.
No, I am.
Hi.
Hi.
What's up?
So the talk made me think about this phrase that keeps coming to me, or has been coming to me lately. It's instance of the divine. How everything is an instance of the divine.
Yes.
I like that phrase.
Yes.
This table, my glasses, everything. And that bringing all three together, like you were talking about, when that happens, whether it's by accident or through working or
Yes.
combination or
Yes.
whatever,
Yes.
you do perceive that what you are looking at is an instance of the divine. And then when all three are not together,
Yeah.
in conflict, everything is an instance of the devil.
You could say that.
that Eric must fix or get or destroy to get what he wants.
Yeah.
So, a complete inversion happens when all three are not together.
Absolutely.
That was it.
No, that's perfect. And I don't know if I talked about this earlier or not, or whether it's in my mind to speak of at some later point. We think to ourselves, I'm at the dinner table and somebody says something to me or my wife, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly there's this reaction, what you would call an instance of the devil. In that split second, the instance of the divine is to recognize, God willing, that moment that I call the event where you hurt me is not the event where you hurt me. It's an event the mind created out of a moment of creation where everything was coming into existence and moving out of existence. And rather than just seeing the beautiful empty instance of the divine, the constant movement of this light and life, something in me wants to derive an identity from it. And when I finally start recognizing it, I'm much more able to let go, realizing the event is in motion. It's a creation. It isn't done. The possibility of the event depends upon the witness to the event and what he or she makes of it. And if I'm myself a creation and part of the event, then the whole thing is just this movement of light and of realization of my relationship as part of that light. So absolutely, I hope that tied together that idea. To see events, a person is a creation. They're not done. Imagine if you were done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? I'm
That
not
would
done.
hurt.
No, I'm in process. We never think to ourselves when we're judging ourselves, we're in process because we're too busy being processed by a part of us that has decided that whatever it was we said or did shouldn't have been like that. All got to go.
So an instance of the divine isn't necessarily, isn't just this beauty moment.
Yes.
It's
It's the
for
revelation. Yes, exactly. That's it. It is not fixed. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is fixed. Everything that you look at is in motion. We just aren't aware of the motion because our senses don't pick it up. But we can begin to see that and intuit it, and then as science does, proves. I'm looking at a table, it seems solid. That thing has 400 trillion moving parts all at once. Like an airplane propeller, when it's spinning real fast, looks solid. Everything looks solid to us, including our own thoughts. And they're not. They're creations.
okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Wow, that was awesome. Thank you. Do you like that Hawkeye in the background there?
You know what? I was about to make a comment, but I decided not to do it.
I couldn't resist being his wife. I'm surprised a cat didn't wander by too. All right. I'm sending over this comment or a question that came in on YouTube a few weeks back, and there was someone else who also commented on that person's comment. And so I'm going to go ahead and read all of this. I think it's important.
Sure.
So here we go. So this was a question that came in from Greg. He says, my question is regarding confusion. I feel like I'm constantly resisting my own confusion after I listen to any of your talks. And to try to reconcile that confusion, I will listen to 10 more of your talks and wind up more confused and exhausted. I know, oh my. I'm listening to you now nearly 12 years and I'm still battling with this. How can I stop resisting this confusion? I obviously also see that resisting the condition is the torment. I'm trying to keep everything simple, but Greg keeps getting in his own way. And then someone replied to Greg and said, I'm so glad you asked this. I feel the exact same way. Years ago, I bought a book by Mr. Finley called The Courage to Be Free. I recently picked it back up these 10 years later, and I've listened to a few lectures here on YouTube, and the teachings just don't click. They sound nice, but I almost feel like I'm not part of the club for not understanding, and I'm at a loss for how to implement or live this way of life. No clue.
So, hello, Greg, and hello, YouTube viewer. I'm going to give you something concrete to do. It's not meant to confuse you, and I intended to put it in today's talk, but I didn't have time. There's this very unusual passage in the Old Testament. Moses is talking to ostensibly disciples, and they're asking him certain questions, and they say to him, we hear what you say and we will do it. He was giving them law. That's the way we are. We hear something and we want to do it. And he said, no, don't hear and do. He said, do, and then you will hear. I just love that. What did he mean? Do, and you will hear. he meant this with regards to this confusion and this dissatisfaction that you're experiencing, even though you are continually drawn to want some of the nourishment that comes from the material. You have to see this for yourself in order for it to be a successful experiment. And you must experiment, Greg and the other viewer from YouTube. There's only one thing that this mind knows to do when by itself, it seems like it's you that's doing it, but it's not. When this mind decides, I'm not satisfied, I'm dissatisfied. That can be so simple. Walking by the vegetable fruit stand in a market, instead of the organic something you wanted, they're out of it. Instantaneous dissatisfaction. You're with a friend at a dinner table, you're looking at your news on the TV, whatever you're doing. Dissatisfaction. It's rampant. So the first thing is to understand that there is a nature that is constantly dissatisfied. And that nature that is constantly dissatisfied, for instance, with its own confusion, that nature, the minute it is dissatisfied, what does it do, Greg? What do any of us do in the throes of that reaction of dissatisfaction? What do any of us do? And the answer is, we immediately do what we need to answer that dissatisfaction. Mind says, I'm dissatisfied with you. I may not act it out, but I'm plotting and planning how to get you to be who I need you to be. The mind looks at the world and says, this is a crappy, terrible place. I hate this world. And it is already formulating a plan to deal with the dissatisfaction. I'm going to make mega bucks. I'm going to live on an island someplace. I'm going to dismiss myself from everybody else. I'll be my own rugged individual. And the dissatisfaction that we feel with one image that didn't play out, that the mind itself had identified with, to replace that dissatisfaction with that image and sense of self, it comes up with another image and another sense of self. And now I'm momentarily satisfied with my confusion, in a manner of speaking, because at least I know who I am. So here's the exercise, Greg. Don't try to replace dissatisfaction with anything. Watch how this mind, dissatisfied, for instance, let's say, like for instance, this morning, personally, this morning I woke up, I have no idea why, I had vertigo. Been feeling good, just wake up, I walk like a drunk man into the restroom. Then I had to prepare and do this stuff, and all the time my mind, what it wanted to do, it didn't want the vertigo. It wanted to know why, how, when, where will this be done? So it was always not in the time of the vertigo, but it was always in the dissatisfaction that was trying to escape the fact that I have vertigo. So the mind is always trying to escape what it doesn't want. It's always dissatisfied with anything that doesn't give it what it's imagined it needs. That's what it does. You can see this. Can I see this dissatisfaction? Can I hear these thoughts? Can I feel the tension in my body as it resists whatever conclusion, whatever part of me has come to? And instead of answering the dissatisfaction with what the mind, body, or heart prescribes in order to release me from that pain, instead of answering the dissatisfaction with yet another part that will be the next place of dissatisfaction, in that moment, to touch base, to look in the mirror, and let my watchfulness be the answer to the dissatisfaction. Let the capacity I have to be aware of the whole movement of this nature be the response. Because if I can do that, and if it's even for a moment, you will gain a glimpse, Greg, not of the certainty you're seeking, but of the nature that's constantly confused because it can't get life to line up with what it assumes life should be like. Just try it. Everybody, just work at it. Let the dissatisfaction run as deep as it runs. And I'm not talking about, look, you're sitting outside and you're cold. And I would do something other, but I'm not saying how do I say this to you? I'm talking psychologically. Dissatisfied with the way you spoke to me. You and I both know any moment that we're dissatisfied with the way somebody speaks to us, instantaneously we have the satisfaction of a response where we're going to set them straight. Don't do it. Don't go for it. Watch the how shall I say this? Watch the first responder. And let the first responder go through its full iteration. And it will rise up, it'll seize, and then it'll start to disappear. And you'll know for the first time, Greg, why you should never answer confusion with some wish not to be confused. The answer will be to let this confused nature reveal itself, and it will disappear back into itself, and you will have gained some precious understanding, some self-knowledge that cannot be realized in any other way. I think we have to stop on that, Kate.
Perfect, Guy. I will save any leftover questions for next time. And we'll just take a moment here for me to remind you about our schedule. Guy is speaking live on the weekends now, just on Saturdays and Sundays. So on Saturdays, he speaks on insighttimer.com at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And on Sundays, he does exactly what we're doing today at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. So do tune in for these times. And we used to have live classes on Wednesdays. We no longer do, but we are still broadcasting Classic Talks with Guy Finley. So tune in this coming Wednesday for another Classic Talk. We had our first one this past week, which was great. These are really great talks. Anyway, enough said on that, but you will get a reminder if you're on GoToWebinar per the usual. You'll be able to watch there, and on YouTube and Facebook, it's all the same. So just tune in for that at 6 p.m. Pacific time. It's just a 1-hour talk. We will have the free replays of those available on YouTube and Facebook for 48 hours. And then we're going to take them down and they will be archived in our online wisdom school. So if you're not already an online wisdom school member, you can learn more about that on our website at guyfinley.org/wisdom. Let's see. And I just want to remind you too about our 2 study groups. We have a Monday study group for our wisdom school members and a Friday study group that's free to everyone, to the public. Both of those are now starting at 6 p.m. Pacific time as well. So just a reminder about all of that. And all of this information is on our website. And I think that's it for today. Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you again this week, of course. And Guy, now the special moment comes for you to hit that button again that says go live so that you stop the stream.